Hello, in this video I would like to demonstrate a user interface framework I've been working on. It is called Owlkettle and it is a library for the NIM programming language. Owlkettle is based on GTK and aims to simplify developing Linux apps. To install it, you first need a working installation of the NIM programming language. Then you run the commands on screen depending on the operating system you use. We will now look at a simple example of what you can do with Owlkettle. We're going to build a simple counter app which just contains a button and a label. When you click the button, the label increments. We will start by importing Owlkettle. Now we can define our application state. In this case, it just contains a single field, which is the current count. Now we can define the view method. It takes our current application state and returns the widgets we want to display to the user. Finally, we call the brew procedure to start our application. When we run this program, we get an empty window with the title counter. Next, let's add the label which displays the current count. Since we later want to put a button next to it, we wrap it in a box widget. Now we can add the increment button next to the label. I chose the plus symbol as its text here, and when it is clicked, we increment the count of the app by 1. As you can see, when we click the button, the count now increments. To make our application look a bit nicer, we can add a few layout constraints to the box widget. In this case, we specify a margin to increase the distance between the widgets inside the box and the window border, and a spacing to specify a minimum distance between the widgets in the box. Finally, we can also highlight the increment button. Owlkettle is a declarative framework. This means that the contents of the widgets are automatically updated to reflect changes in the application state. There's no need to manually update the text of the label or create and destroy widgets to keep them in sync with the application state. To explore this concept a bit more, let's expand our example app to support multiple counters. First, we need to change our application state to store multiple counters. In the view method, we now iterate through these counters and generate the widgets which display them. We put the individual counters in a vertical box so they are placed under one another. When we compile and run our application now, we see an empty window because we did not add any counters yet. For testing purposes, we can just initialize our app with 3 default counters. When we run our application now, we see 3 counters, which can be individually incremented. Finally, we want to allow the user to create new counters. I would like to place the button which does this inside the header bar of the window. Let's begin by adding a header bar widget to the window. Now we can add the button to its left side. It uses the list add symbolic icon, and when we click it, a new counter is added to the app state. When we run our application now, we can add new counters and increment them individually. In this example, you can see the declarative nature of Owlkettle very well. The new counter widgets are added automatically in order to reflect the application state. If this video piqued your interest in this project, you can look at the documentation and more example projects by following the links in the description below. Please consider subscribing for updates on the project and more explanation videos.